Silver is attracting new attention, and today I'm talking with probably one of the biggest silver investors in North America, if not the world, the CEO of Electrum Group, Thomas Kaplan. He started his fortune in silver options in the early 90s, moved over to gold and platinum in the 2000s, and after nearly 20 years, in an exclusive interview with Kitco News, he says he's back into silver. Thomas, it's great to talk with you again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Neil. It's great to see you.
So we have a lot to talk about today. The Electrum Group is involved in a lot of different projects, but the first question I have to ask is, why silver? Why now?
Well, the truth is, I never really left silver. I just left it in the public domain. And coming back to silver just essentially means that we are, as it were, coming forward with the assets that we've owned and have been nurturing for years now. Silver was my first love in terms of the precious metals, and I would say that it is still my my biggest romance. The difference with gold is that whereas we've been more public in terms of our pronouncements and in terms of our engagement, particularly with our flagship Nova Gold. With silver, the assets that we have been not deliberately under wraps because we weren't hiding anything. It's just that we wanted to keep them back because I'm not a believer in taking things public too quickly. I think that you garner a better reputation by making the sausages in darkness. And then by the time you reveal something, it's really ready for prime time. It's suitable for investors, institutional and otherwise. And it's no longer dependent on the next drill hole. And so as much as I love exploration, I think that that's an area that really should be conducted as quietly as possible. If you fail, nobody needs to know. And if you succeed, then you get to see how big it is before the rest of the world does, which is extremely helpful.
So is it more fortuitous then that you've launched a new public silver company in this environment, or was this planned? Like, did you see the start of the year that, hey, you know, we should go public?
Well, I'll tell you, the truth is that, sometimes generals fight the last wars. And as an old general who began in the silver business in 1993, my strategy then was to be able to act as a consolidator of exploration properties and development stage assets or shut down mines. The price of silver was at $3.50. Nobody was interested in being in it. Hecla, Coeur, Sunshine were trying to diversify into everything from kimberlite pipes in West Africa to industrial ceramics to gold in New Zealand. So really nobody wanted to be in silver. And I loved that because I was a complete neophyte. I surrounded myself with incredibly talented people who could help me make deals and identify great properties. And the idea was to build a large, diversified silver company. Somewhat, we started at the same time, somewhat as Ross Beatty was doing, or Bob Quartermain was doing with Pan American and Silver Standard, respectively. What happened is that we made a discovery in Bolivia, which made the dozen other properties that we had acquired literally from Mexico to Mongolia and everywhere in between seem really small. And that was San Cristobal, which was discovered by Dr. Larry Buchanan, an extremely renowned geologist even then. And for this, he and his team won the Thayer Lindsley Award at PDAC. I have a feeling he's on his way to winning another one. We'll get to that a little bit later. But my thought was, in fighting that last war, that we will combine all of our silver assets into one vehicle. And that would mean the Los Gatos property, which was discovered by our team and by geologists that have been working for us, Bud Hillermeyer, and just great people. And we wanted to put that together with the Sunshine mining complex in Idaho. And that would then add to it all of our other silver exploration property, which we were aggressively pursuing for the last decade. I'm never, ever happy unless I know that there are drill rigs turning somewhere. I love exploration. It's my favorite part of the business. Well, things happened, and some of even though we controlled the vast majority of our silver assets, we did have a couple of minority investors, and they said, look, we don't want the exploration part. You have enough with Los Gatos in Mexico and with Sunshine. You keep the exploration. That way the risk is all yours because, and not unreasonably, the odds are terrible. But I did tell them, I'm really feeling lucky, and I know you can't factor that into a business model, but I really would suggest that you want exposure to that. And they said, no, thank you. Okay. So we continued on, and that now has become led by, once again, Dr. Larry Buchanan and one of our chief geos, Magdalena Luna, and Mark Pryor, a very, very large discovery in Mexico, which could be as large, we think, as San Cristobal. So we have three different assets at different phases of development.
Well, I was going to say the company that you went public with is Gatos Silver, and that went public in November. I figure we should mention that.
Yes, and that's producing. That is probably Mexico's most recently constructed silver mine. It's absolutely state of the art. We have a partner. 30% of the project is owned by Dowa of Japan, which has the world's largest zinc smelter. So they have the offtakes agreements, which work perfectly for both of us. So we have the Gatos asset, which went public, and which is really just a beautiful, beautiful pure play on silver and zinc in Mexico. Both of them are doing extremely well. Because we were private, we were able to acquire an enormous amount of land without having to make noise about it. And so Gatos really commands an entire district that normally in Mexico would have been fragmented into several mining companies. So we think that the organic growth at Gatos is such that we could see 11, 12, 13 million ounces of production there, potentially multiply as we have more discoveries along the district. So that's a producer, and that appeals to a certain kind of investor. The Sunshine Mining Complex is another extraordinary story, perhaps even unique in the sense that it's really the only silver mining complex in the United States where we own everything from the mine face all the way through the value chain to a refinery that can produce silver bars that go directly to COMEX. So in terms of its autonomy, it's extraordinary. And then there's the size. Sunshine is probably the most famous silver mine in American history. It produced 360 million ounces of silver. When we acquired it out of bankruptcy over a decade ago, the general zeitgeist was that it was burnt out and not very much was left. Sunshine, because it always had perennial financial problems going back to the time when it warded off Bunker Hunt, who was trying to take it over, had really not undergone systematic modern geological assessment, including using 3D. And it was very, very, very primitive in that sense. Our geologists had the view that in short order, we could test the theory that Sunshine held at least as much silver as it had produced. Now, that was a very, very juicy target, and we drilled 13 holes, and all of them hit the target, and we went from several dozen million ounces of inferred to over 200 million ounces of inferred, with an average estimated grade of 25 ounces a ton. Sunshine was the largest, at highest grade, large-scale silver mine in the world. And I think that after we're done assessing it, looking at it through a 3 to 4, 5-year framework, a 10-year framework, and ultimately what I expect will be a 50 or 60-year framework, we'll know exactly how much we'll produce. Meanwhile, we'll use the down cycle in metals equities to consolidate a lot of the land positions in the Silver Valley for the first time. And so I believe that we are the largest holder of mineral rights now in the Silver Valley with multiple additional targets. So this is a lot of fun. I coveted this property. In fact, when I got married, we gave medallions to the wedding guests, which were made out of silver from the Sunshine Mine. And I didn't own it yet. We waited for it to go bankrupt and buy it at auction. But the first property that I'd ever optioned that took me into the mining business in 1993 was right across the street from Sunshine. And I told my then fiance, who was with me on that trip, one day I'm going to own that, because I really do believe it's the jewel of American silver mining. Just the grade, the size, excellent workforce, permits, Idaho. And the truth is, for all of the jurisdictional issues that we talk about in gold, they're just as pronounced in silver. So location, location, location. And we love Idaho. Hard to beat it.
What are your expectations for silver price? I mean, is this the start of a bull run? Do we see, is it only a matter of time before silver hits its all-time highs like we saw with gold earlier this year?
Yes, that's the short answer. The longer answer is that I've always regarded silver as being gold on steroids. In fact, when I started in the mining business, as I say, I started in silver. And around that time, the people who became my strategic partners, the Quantum Fund and the Soros family, had just become the largest shareholders of Newmont Mining. They bought it's not control block, but certainly the largest piece of Newmont from Sir James Goldsmith. And they said, you must be bullish on gold. And I said, well, And they said, what do you mean? And I said, look, any reason that I have to be bullish on gold is multiplied for silver because of the industrial aspect. And that was my argument. And then in the early 2000s, I became much more bullish on gold as well as silver. And that's really when Electrum, our corporate entity, really came into its own, because Electrum means or is a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver, from which the first money was minted in ancient Lydia. And I thought, wow, that is the perfect name. It is a reflection of our emphasis on both metals, and it's a cool name. And so that's how that came about. But the truth is that we never really left silver. It's just that we've been nurturing the assets privately. And what you're starting to see is, as it were, the beginning of the coming out parties. And it's fun because people will say, wow, we didn't know that you were in silver. And I go, well, I've always said that I'm bullish on silver. And I always say that silver is gold on steroids. And I'm wildly bullish on gold. And so, you've got to own silver. But I always caution people, steroids work both ways. It's great when you're on a high, and it's not so great when silver's getting beaten up. So the fact that it has two really lovely personalities, monetary and industrial, can work against it at certain times. And about 1.5 years ago, I gave an interview to David Rubenstein on Bloomberg, and he asked me about silver, and he said, would you buy it? And I said, yes, but your audience needs to understand the difference. So I said, when you have a financial crisis, and now you can just think about what happened about 1 year later in March. When you have a financial crisis, Silver often really takes it on the chin with base metals and what I would call commodities, whereas gold gets a little bit hit so that it can generate liquidity for someone, but at the same time, it will start to move up as a monetary metal because of the measures being taken to bring confidence back into the economy. Once silver stabilizes and gold is going up as a monetary metal, silver then starts to follow gold, and then it gets octane and it surpasses gold. And that's what happened during the financial crisis. Before silver went to 50, it went to 9. And indeed in March, February, March, silver went down to $12. And people thought, oh my God, that's, it must be dead. And I said, no. I said, no, you can buy it. And they said, well, how do you know when to buy it? And I said, oh, it's like catching a falling knife. It's going to be a little bit bloody, but very soon, you'll have a really, really great knife. And silver went from 12 and then like a rubber band to 30. So gold went from 1800 to 1400. Silver went from 20s to 12, but then gold rebounded and silver went back to 30. So I keep repeating this to people, and then they say, well, if you know the phenomenon, then it's unlikely to repeat itself. And I go, no, because human nature is to freeze up during those panics. So especially with COVID, people were more focused on their health, their families, their employees, and they weren't really, so focused on silver. But silver behaved exactly as it was supposed to. So I would expect silver will be more volatile than gold. It's just the way it is. But if you asked me, can silver go to $100 an ounce? I'd say absolutely, without a problem. I mean, the truth is that silver now has achieved a tremendous amount of traction in the media, which is really extraordinary. The days when the media always mentioned bunker hunt are really well and truly gone. And in fact, when people talk about silver in the media now, it's primarily as a green metal, as something that is part of, as it were, the Green New Deal. Let's just use that metaphorically. Who knows what will come of it? But the truth is that silver has industrial properties that are extremely beneficial. It's the most conductive of all metals, the most malleable of all metals. It's used in solar panels. It's the most reflective of all metals. It's an antibacterial, so water purification. So it's got all of these industrial applications that make it vulnerable to economic decline, but also very, very susceptible to a spring back and a propulsion that even gold doesn't have, because silver is still going to be cheap relative to comparables that would fulfill the same industrial applications. So nobody's going to substitute it with gold or PGMs, which basically means silver can go up as a monetary metal with gold, but those people who need it for those applications, they have to buy it. And unless the price of silver goes to hundreds of dollars an ounce, sure, there'll be some substitution, but that's really not the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, knowing that industrial buyers will have to pile in as silver goes up as a monetary metal.
So do you think industrial demand then is what drives silver next year? I mean, after the catastrophe that we've seen in 2020, vaccines coming, hope that the economy revives, is this what makes silver shine next year?
I think it's a combination of the fact that the industrial demand is rising, and at the same time, the fact that silver has been reaffirmed as an asset class is extremely compelling when you think of how little silver is actually available in the market. And one of the reasons, of course, is that silver is, to my mind, first and foremost, in its legacy, a monetary metal. If you look at what's really been money, silver was the primary monetary metal throughout history. By the way, that's a quotation from Milton Friedman. It wasn't gold. And if you look, the word for silver and money in the Bible is the same, kesef. If argentum in Latin, argent, is money, and silver in French, plata. I could go on. So silver and money are somewhat synonymous. And when gold does well, silver, as I said, tends to outperform it. But the numerous industrial applications, especially now, mean that you're going to have a double-barreled impact on silver. And what's nice about that is that people can wrap their heads around something that's industrially consumed. It doesn't mean that gold will not flourish almost as much as silver. But as you've seen in the recovery in copper, for example, and even in oil a little bit, people love the idea that something gets consumed. I personally think that that's a myth, but that's not my problem. I think that the truth is that silver is consumed and by some buyers and not consumed by others. So it really is a brilliant way to play precious metals and industrial metals.